All right. Good afternoon, everyone. At this time, I would like to call to order the October 23rd special board meeting of the North County Transit San Diego Railroad. Before we begin, members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page, please note that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. In addition, you must also register by sending an email containing your name or phone number and the agenda item on which you wish to speak to clerk@nctd.org. So now we'll do our roll call, and I'll look over to Sahil Rodriguez to get that started.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair Patel.
Here.
Vice Chair Sinella.
Here.
Board Member Martinez.
Here.
Board Member O'Hara. Board Member Garcia. Board Member Joyce.
Present.
Board Member Desmond. Here. Board Alternate McDonald. Welcome. Board Member Contreras.
Present.
This completes the roll with Board Members O'Hara and Garcia absent.
Great, thank you. And the first two items on the agenda are closed session, so I'll look to Lori Winfrey if she could take us into closed session.
Madam Chair, we need to public hear.
Oh, okay, so sorry, I must have skipped that. So any public comment?
Yes, we do have one public speaker here today, Mr. Kevin Ham,
Okay, sorry.
on this particular item. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Ham. Can you hear me? Yeah, it's a small room, right? I'm so used to saying good evening, right? So good afternoon. So it may sound as I start this, I'm not talking about this item, but I am. So I wanted to let you know I'm here today on behalf of the Oceanside Coastal Neighborhood Association and talking specifically about the Oceanside Transit Center project, but Sean's involvement and some of the things that I have appreciated with that. But first off, I want to say that, you know, we strongly support not placing buses on Missouri. We've been dealing with this since the beginning, and, you know, I've talked to many of you about the issue. You know, moving the buses to the southern lot will cause major traffic, noise, pollution problems for the surrounding neighborhoods. 1,000 new additional vehicles, 3,000 new daily trips on small local streets only rated for between 200 and 1,500 trips a day is significant. And today, before I realized it was Sean and Lori's review, you know, I was going to go a different direction. And I wanted to say a little bit about how it's been a challenge to mitigate it, but it's actually become better. And so even though these efforts have been a challenge, I really have appreciated your new CEO's ability to reach out, connect with people. I honestly believe we probably would not be here today if Sean was here when the project started. So I wanted to say your staff has actually reached out to us with OCNA, and we're going to sit down and talk about some solutions. So I really appreciate that. And I say, Sean, thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it. You know, unless we do find a solution that's acceptable, we will continue to say, hey, this is something that we don't want to see and work with the council. However, we are hopeful, and I am hopeful. And I just want to say thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We have no further speakers for this particular item.
Okay. All right, Ms. Winfrey.
Thank you. We have 2 items for closed session today. They both are pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, Public Employee Performance Evaluation for our CEO, Sean Donaghy, and for myself, Deputy CEO and Chief General Counsel, Lori Winfrey.
All right, if everyone has taken their seats, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. If everyone can please take your seats and quiet down. Perfect, thank you. All right, Lori, can we go ahead and bring us back from closed session?
Yes, the board is now returning from closed session with no reportable action. The items will be heard at the regular meeting of the board as agenda items number 16 and 17.
Great, thank you. So we're actually going to adjourn this one and then reconvene for the next one literally right after. So we are going to adjourn the special meeting at 2:04. I'll give it a second before we transition to the next one. All right. Well, welcome back. 30 seconds later, everyone. At this time, I would like to call to order the October 23rd regular board meeting of the North County Transit San Diego Railroad. Before we begin, members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page, please note that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. In addition, you must also register by sending an email containing your name or phone number and the agenda item on which you wish to speak to clerk@nctd.org. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do our verbal roll call, and I'll look to Ms. Rodriguez, our clerk of the board, to do that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair Patel.
Here.
Vice Chair Sinella.
Here.
Board Member Martinez.
Here.
Board Member O'Hara.
Here.
Thank you. Board Member Garcia. Board Member Joyce.
Present.
Board Member Desmond.
Here.
Board Alternate McDonald.
Here.
Board Member Contreras.
Present.
And Board Alternate Coleman.
Here.
This completes the roll.
Great, thank you. And Board Alternate Coleman, would you help us lead us in the pledge? Thank you. We'll now move on to our safety brief and evacuation procedures. Ms. Rodriguez, would you be able to walk us through that?
Yes, Madam Chair. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevator. Once cleared of the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of the building. There is a portable defibrillator on the first and third floor, and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda that we should be aware of?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. And then now we're moving on to general public comments. Do we have any public speakers today?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. We do have, there were 15 general public comments that were received via email, and those were sent to the board prior to the meeting and were posted on our website as well. And in addition to that, we do have 5 general public comments today here in person, and I will call them in the order they were received. Diane Nygaard. You can please turn on your mic, and you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and board members. Diane Nygaard, representing Preserve Calavera. Over the last year, we've come before this board several times expressing concerns about the Oceanside Transit Center project. But today we're coming back to say we appreciate how the development team has worked with us and other community representatives in a good faith effort to address those concerns. This project is not perfect, but it certainly has raised the bar for dense development like this in downtown Oceanside. We especially appreciate that it's providing 15% affordable housing, not just 10% that most of the projects are doing. And it includes comprehensive transportation demand management plans so that all the users on site are going to take meaningful effort to reduce the number of car trips. Because of everyone's effort, this is a far better project than it could have been. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is James Phelan. Okay, we'll call him next then. Lane Stewart. you have 3 minutes. You can turn on your mic, please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members of the NCDD. My name is Lane Stewart. My wife and I live at 425 South Tremont Street, about 250 feet from the Missouri Avenue at the south end of the Oceanside Transit Center development. And this is what I'm discussing today. I attended the October 7th City Council meeting. I was surprised, as you probably were, that the project was not approved but continued. Mayor Sanchez suggested that if the southbound bus route was moved off of Missouri Avenue, that she would approve the project. And I'm hoping that you have the ability to direct staff to do this. I would like to see the project move forward without buses on Missouri Street, on Missouri Avenue. I'm sure you're aware that the decision to have the southbound buses exit onto Missouri Avenue, and it was changed right before the final public meeting, much to the surprise of us, to those of us who had participated with Toll Brothers since the beginning. All previous plans showed the on-site routing, and that was my concern. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker will be James Phelan. You have 3 minutes.
I won't take the 3 minutes. I'm Jim Phelons. I live at 401 South Cleveland Street. My driveway is 50 feet from where the new terminal will be centered, so it directly impacts me on the Oceanside Transit Center redevelopment project. Basically, I'm for the project. I think it's a wonderful project. I think that Toll Brothers and the NCTD have done a wonderful job of designing a development that's going to really benefit the community in many ways. But I am opposed to putting buses onto Missouri Street, not just because it affects my access, but because it's just not safe. I walk in the neighborhood and I see neighbors walking their dogs, bicyclists, skateboarders, and this street was only designed for 200 to 1,500 trips per day. It's a local street. It doesn't even have the pavement thickness to support buses. It was never designed for continuous bus traffic. And it's not just me speaking. I've gone out and I've talked to dozens of neighbors. I've got over 100 people signed a petition opposing the buses routing onto Missouri Street. I've talked to the neighbors. I've gotten out and really worked the neighborhood to understand their concerns, and they all voice the same concern that I do. The thing is, there's solutions. And I'm here today to talk about working with the NCTD to find a common solution that benefits us all. I mean, Missouri alone has 11 homes on the street. Michigan has no homes. Topeka has 3 homes at most. Seagaze, which has served the bus routing into this old site for 40 years, has no homes and is 52 feet wide and is designed for 4,500 trips per day. Let's face it, we all live in the same neighborhood. We're all working together, living together, and we should find a common solution together. We're facing 7 years of construction overall, and I personally have suffered through the last couple of weeks with the construction of the crossing there at the south end of the Sprinter terminal. Last night, the jackhammers woke me up at 2 in the morning. And it's been going on for a couple of nights. Now, that's not going to happen every night, but it is an issue. And I'm here to be a part of the solution. I want to work with the NCTD to find a different route that serves the community and serves the neighborhood as well at the same time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Joan Brown. Ms. Brown, you have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Joan Brown, and I live in San Marcos. I used to live here for 20 years, so I'm aware of everything going on with the transit center here. I'm here today as a bus user, and the things that I find that are not quite up to my age and, as you can see, sight. But I see it happening more and more. The first thing I'd like to comment on, and believe me, I really appreciate the transit that's here in the North County. I really find it very good, although it doesn't stop enough. it's a long walk between stops. Anyway, when I came down here at the Civic Center in San Marcos, what scares me most are the e-bikes, because there are many nice wide sidewalks there, and they go 30 miles an hour right on the sidewalk, right outside the terminal, and even by the tracks. The young kids will be up there on their e-bikes, and it's very scary, trust me. And I don't think they should be allowed to go on the sidewalk because they're so fast. And now I would like to comment on the 347 bus that goes from college to college, and which does not really stop anywhere, and it's always empty. Although I believe you could make money on that because you need to stop more by the stores on Nordahl, not Nordahl, but on San Marcos Boulevard, and at the North City, which San Marcos wants to make its downtown there. And the 351 that goes up Nordahl, it doesn't stop. And there's no talking light there on Mission, and there are no talking lights to cross on Nordahl sidewalks to go past those two in and outs going onto the freeway. So I believe that should be taken care of, because it's very safety. And I fell twice at the same place, if you want to believe that, up by College and Walmart, because there is no signage on the curbs, and you're up there with that cart, Walmart cart that's 4 feet long, and that sidewalk curves. It's not painted at all red, and you have to follow that with the sun in your eye. Twice I fell in between buses. So anyway, please think about that. I think it'd be very important.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Our last speaker is John Mosher. Mr. Mosher, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, Board. My name is John Mosier. I'm from San Marcos, also with San Marcos Mobile Home Residents Association. I'm here today because of last month's meeting when Caltrans came down and talked about the hydrogen trains, and we talked about the buses. And I had a chance to talk with Sean at the Heroes of Oceanside event about this and the hydrogen infrastructure we need and the fueling stations we need for the future. What I've done is I also mentioned it at the San Marcos Unified School District Board meeting, and also at Clean Energy Alliance, our community advisory committee. I suggested for us that we actually investigate this and use that as something for this next year to look into as for one of our projects. The reason I'm bringing them up is because I want to make sure I'm doing it the right way and I understand what we really need. I talked to Yoni briefly at a meeting at our senior center on Tuesday and sent her an email to start the process. But I just want to make sure I'm on the right page. I'm presenting it properly as to what we're going to need up here in North County and throughout the whole county for the hydrogen products that we have coming for us in the future. The other thing I want to say is Supervisor Desmond, I was reading something recently referenced the corporate ownership and foreign ownership of our homes, et cetera. And also it actually came up in a discussion today with Dr. Darshana Patel, and we talked about the housing in the state and also the country, and how a lot of these corporations are buying up the homes and turn them into rentals and then controlling the price in the markets. I look at it from the mobile home park side as well as being a viable alternative for housing, moving up or down, and we discussed that as well. But it's something I like the fact you brought it up. I believe it needs to keep being brought out there. I know trying to create rent caps is a tough thing, but if controlling the ownership and making sure people have an opportunity to buy that entry-level home instead of having to rent the thing is a good thing for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more further speakers. And just for the record, Board Member Garcia arrived at 2:16.
Great, thank you. All right, so before we proceed, I have a couple of quick protocol items to share. First, I will ask board members to please hold your comments and questions until after each agenda item has been presented. When the time comes for board member questions or comments, if you could raise your hand and wait until you are called upon to speak. Please turn on and speak into your microphone when it is your turn to speak. This will ensure that your comments are heard for those listening to the meeting online. And then lastly, when it is time to vote, Suhail will call a verbal vote. So our first item is the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the regular board meeting of September 18th, 2025?
Motion to approve.
Okay, so a motion by O'Hara, seconded by Desmond. Suhail, could we please call the vote?
Yes. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? On the motion of Board Member O'Hara, seconded by Board Member Desmond, to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting on September 18, 2025, motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on to consent, there are 14 items on the consent agenda for action today. Do we have any members of the public registered to speak on consent or requested that any consent items be pulled?
No, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. At this time, we are ending the public registration to speak on consent items. Do any board members wish to pull items from consent?
Item 4.
Okay, item 4 will be trailed to the end of the agenda. Anybody else?
Second.
Okay, so motion by Desmond, seconded by, oh my gosh, Sanella. I was going to call you your first name. All right. And then, of course, we heard the pull for item 4. So it's just without that.
Yes. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? On the motion of Board Member Desmond, seconded by Vice Chair Sanella, to approve consent items 1 through 3 and 5 to 14. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. So just so you know, we'll have it at the end of the agenda after the other items. Yeah. All right, perfect. All right, so we will now go into other business items on the agenda. The first item will be a review of the proposed modifications of NCTD board policies. At last week's executive committee meeting, the committee recommended that the proposed modifications be brought to the regular board meeting for discussion and consideration of adoption. So Suhail Rodriguez, our Director of Administration, will present this item. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to her.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So good afternoon, board members. We're going to be reviewing any proposed modifications to the board policies today. And I do have Ms. Mary Dover sitting on my left that will be here explaining any specific questions you have on policy or legislation. So as background, every year we bring forward the board policies for review to the executive committee, which happened on October 13th. And then today we're here to review the same proposed modifications and consider any feedback that you may have as well. Most of the revisions are non-substantive, so from the 34 policies, only 4 policies will have any substantive changes. And I'll go through the slides that list the remaining 30 policies here. Okay. So specifically of the 4 that we proposed some modifications, we have 3 that will go into detail. The first one is board policy number 3 is our committee and external appointments. So the proposed modifications the staff recommended were to change the structure of the internal committee scheduling. This was done in order to provide greater clarity for all the board members that wanted to join some of the committees at the end of the year, and then also to help reduce some scheduling challenges that we were having. It was also to align these committee schedules with other regional transit agencies in the area. Board policy number 5, which was public notice and participation. We did add a budget adoption requirement for a public hearing under our Brown Act requirement. Just so you know, our budget development board policy 17 does already include that, but we wanted to add it here for greater transparency. And then we revised the public participation process based on an executive order that was signed in January by the Trump administration, ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity. Board policy number 8 is our conflict of interest policy. So this one, we made revisions to the process where filing or your Form 700 is now only done electronically. The County of San Diego now has a web portal that is managed by them, and they make sure that these filings are done electronically. It is no longer done in paper form. And then we also added and removed any positions to streamline the positions that we had listed in our at NCTD, and those changes, and the disclosure categories were also revised. And then lastly, our board policy number 25, disadvantaged business enterprise program. This was revised also to ensure compliance with the interim final rule of the DOT that was issued just September of this year. And the rule eliminates any long-standing race or sex-based presumptions of disadvantage that automatically had classified women and certain racial groups as socially and economically disadvantaged. So as I mentioned earlier, the executive committee did meet on October 13th to review these modifications that we had proposed today. However, it is here on other business to open it for discussion and any feedback that you may have on any other considerations for modifications. If you do decide to, after discussion today, you may consider adopting Resolution 2506 to approve the proposed modifications that staff have recommended. And I'll take any questions, and so will Mary.
Great, thank you. Before I open it up, do we have any public comments on this item?
We do, Madam Chair. We have a Zoom participant, public comment. I'll call his name right now. Mr. Simon Guzman. If you can let me know if you can hear us, and we'll be ready to speak once they allow you to speak.
Okay, yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Simon Guzman. I use pronouns such as he, him, and él. I'm an Oceanside resident, born and raised here. And I'm calling today regarding this item because I was really alarmed by the decision to strike away the environmental justice as part of the mission for the North County Transit District under this board policy number 5. And the reason I wanted to call in is because I think many of us understand that environmental justice matters in our county, in our country, but obviously in our region as well, because many of the commuter communities and neighborhoods surrounded by our transit routes and the exhaustion from our transit systems are particularly low-income communities and communities of color, as well as immigrant communities. Scientists, environmental, and racial justice advocates have demonstrated to us how many of our families have historically faced a disproportionate burden of environmental hazards like industrial and diesel pollution, and how many of these families also face significant health disparities because of these overlaps. Environmental justice is crucial for equitable city development, for fair access to clean environments, healthy communities, and addressing issues like air quality, access to green space, and healthy food, and overall addressing the impacts of climate change. And I understand that, unfortunately, under our current administration, Trump's executive order 14173 rescinded some of the executive orders on environmental justice and other diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives across our country. However, our planet, our Mother Earth, is already in a danger zone in regards to climate change, as we see that in evidenced by rising global temperatures, the increased frequency of extreme weather events like droughts and severe storms, and the melting of glacier and ice sheets. Environmental degradation is hurting our oceans. Marine ecosystems have already passed or are rapidly reaching dangerous tipping points. So this is really not a time for us to move away from environmental justice, but to be rooted deeply and clearly in our values and our efforts to protect our environment and our communities who depend on a healthy planet and healthy neighborhoods. So I'm asking you all as a resident here to please, I strongly urge you to reconsider this modification and instead move to recommit and fully restore environmental justice into the mission of NCDT. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We have no further speakers, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Before I look to the rest of the board, I just wanted to mention this was something I was also concerned about last week, and I was curious. I know you heard some of the questions I had last week around it. If we could just talk about kind of some of the discussion that we had, if you wouldn't mind sharing what I had asked with regards to what would be the best way for us to proceed, given that this was an administrative order, and just how do we navigate it, because many of us shared the same concerns that we'd like to recommit to it and maintain the language. So we were trying to figure out how do we do so in a way that we maintain our standing as an agency and then also at the same time recommit to the language that we clearly all value.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. So similar to the policy as it stands now, when a particular federal administration takes office, they'll sign executive orders on how they would like entities receiving federal government funds to be governed. And so this is a similar case. We have examined the executive order, we've examined previous executive orders from this administration, and we've determined that our recommendation is that the agency strike this portion from the policy. We have seen the Trump administration make orders in this manner and tie them to grant funding. And we receive about $54 million in federal funding from the Federal Transit Administration, and it's essential to us being able to provide service to the communities that we serve. So it is an evolving process. Lori and our legal team has regular meetings with other general counsels for other transit agencies, and I think we're all, because this is such a fresh executive order, our recommendation at this moment is to strike the policy, strike the portion of the policy. When we have those further conversations, if we receive any additional guidance, we can certainly come back to the board, but our recommendation at this time is to strike the language.
And Ms. Winfrey, I see you wanting to chime in as well. Thank you. Ms.
Yes.
Dover.
Yes, thank you. And just adding to what Mary stated, at the executive committee, when we reviewed this policy, I think there was, definitely the sentiment of Simone Guzman was also around the table at the executive committee. I think the conversation that we had was that just because you don't see this language in NCTD Board Policy Number 5 doesn't mean that these things aren't being considered as part of our processes. I think of great importance to the district right now is the fact that we do have some pretty significant and I would say we have had quite a barrage of new and different policies and procedures and laws and executive orders and things that are coming in. We have working groups, legal working groups and policy working groups that are working through these right now. I think it is in the best interest of the district for us to better understand them before we make a decision as to what the board policy should look like. And we need more clarity on these things. I think we've seen in some transit districts around the country where they are losing funding already. And we don't want to be one of those agencies, because it's critical to us that while we are trying to maintain NCTD's mission and the policies that we, strive for and that are important to us in the work that we do, we can't do those without the funding mechanisms to do so. And the federal funding is very important to us. You may see other agencies around the country that say, we're going to adopt policies such as this one. And the language that's here in this board policy came directly from the executive order that has been stricken. And so it can't remain here without some scrutiny from the federal government. And so what I was going to say is you may see other agencies that say, we're going to keep this policy exactly as it is. They have the luxury to do that because they don't rely as much as we do on federal funding for their services to run every day. Even regionally, you might see that that could be the case because MTS, for example, does not rely as much on federal funding as NCTD does to run service every day. So what I would say, sitting here as the Deputy CEO and as the Chief General Counsel, is that NCTD is monitoring this very closely. We made a commitment to the executive committee to try to seek better clarity on this as soon as we reasonably can. Sean and I are the agency executives that have to sign the certifications and assurances to the FTA. And one of those certifications and assurances is exactly this, that we will ensure that all of the policies that are adopted by the board will be free from, these types of statements. And so we're trying to manage that with, how we are practicing our processes on a daily basis. I hope you understand what I'm saying. And so we committed to coming back as soon as we reasonably can, once we get better clarity, with a recommendation on this board policy that I think will better align with the board's wishes.
Thank you. All right, so I'll look, I have other questions later, but any questions or comments from the rest of the board? I'm seeing head nods. I'll start that side and come back around this side. Anything from you, Ms. Coleman? Okay, Ms. Contreras?
Yeah, I would, is it necessary to adopt these board policies today? And if so, why?
I would say specifically on the board policy that there is the most consternation over yes, because we have to get board approval that we will not do that or our federal funding will be frozen. The rest of them, I don't believe they have to be approved today.
So when is that communicated to the federal government? Is this,
When
we do it, we accept it today, and then you have an immediate communication? Or when does that report it out to them?
When we sign our certs and assurances annually, we are testifying or certifying that the agency is in compliance with federal.
And when does that happen?
Anytime we accept funding or if we draw down on a federal grant, and Yoon can be more specific, I guess, on when our next, our
Yeah,
next
I would like to
drawdown
know
is.
specificity on this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That would be an attestation that we have complied with all of the rules and regulations associated with that grant. The certs and assurances are signed on an annual basis, but we are committing to complying on every transaction, whether it's a procurement, utilizing that funding, or a drawdown of that funding, or any transaction that we do, we're committing to following all the rules and regulations associated with that dollar that we're spending.
Yeah, and I would give an example. We have been asked by the federal government to change our language in relation to DEI. And they held the grant until we changed the language in the application, and then they approved the application. So I think to the earlier point that was made, it doesn't excuse our responsibility to make sure that these things are occurring on a local level. But
No, I hear you. I'm just waiting to hear specifically when we anticipate that we have to have this communication to the federal government.
So Laura is correct. When we obligate funding, we have obligated the funding with the FTA for formula funds. However, we have a future grant that's currently in process with the FRA for the infra grant for the San Diego double track project. And when we execute that agreement very shortly in the next month, we will have to sign off on the certs and assurances that Lori alluded to. So yes, every time that we are obligating federal funding, we have to attest to those assurances.
So effectively, should a vote occur when the federal government will reopen, we expect to be able to re-engage the FRA on this particular grant, and at that time, so it really could be any day now.
I would just also state, for your benefit, every single procurement that we do, so for example, there were several items on the board consent agenda today, so contracts that were approved by the board, they all have federal funding attached. As soon as we sign those contracts, they all have federal funding. We are committing to the federal government that we are complying with this executive order.
I mean, it just sounds like it's really important to come up with alternative language at this point. I'm not okay with accepting this removal without alternative language.
I would just say that.
That's all I have to say. I
As-
could
yeah,
pass
as
it around.
agency counsel, I don't think we're prepared to propose something at this time that there's not enough clarity at this time on the new executive order to propose something that I think we would be comfortable with giving to the board.
And I would note, and please correct me if I'm wrong, this language came from an executive order under another president. We did not.
Yeah,
as a
no,
board, come
that's,
up with that
that's
language. It
been,
came
that's
from
been
another
made
executive order.
extremely clear. I think, talking about needing to have clarity, I understand that because I need to have clarity on as to exactly what we can put, what kind of alternative language would be accepted. So I think that's of the utmost priority now, because striking the language as is, I just don't find that to be acceptable.
Thank you, Ms. Contreras. And I think the majority of us last week shared similar concerns, just so you know. So you're echoing our sentiments. So Ms. McDonald, do you have anything?
It is sort of a game with words, isn't it? And although I'm horrified that we're doing this, I feel like we have no choice. And this government is not going to change tomorrow or next week or even next year. And perhaps there will be, at a later date, we'll be able to come back with clarifying language that will make us happier than the action we're going to take today.
Okay, I think we're still doing comments and questions, but if you have any questions or comments at this time, Mr. Desmond, I'm happy to entertain that. All right, great. Okay, well, thank you. And I will continue on down the line. Mr. Joyce?
So I did, in response to this, I sent back some language to staff that I thought could maintain our focus on commitment to fair and inclusive service delivery. And so I'm just curious if that language was looked at from a legal perspective and whether or not it would allow us to maintain the mission without tripping the tripwires of the censorship our new government has for us.
Yeah, we did look at that, and may have Bradley jump in and have some explanation on that. I think from our seat, I don't think that we have a disagreement that what does that language look like in real time. I think the legal opinion is, and I would pass it off to Bradley, that it would be dangerous for us to try to interpret what that is right now. I mean, we really need some time to understand what their goal is through the elimination of this language, and still be in compliance with being able to draw down federal funding. I would say it doesn't. I would say it doesn't change from an agency perspective that our goal is not to eliminate this language and just go out and start providing service that's not acceptable to the community.
I would just, and I would love to hear from you about it, about the language that came over, and unless it's just not at this time. But I would just flag that today we stick with our goal, right? But as these policies change, meeting by meeting, that's how we shift away from our goals. So like, I know that everybody here is committed to inclusive service for all of our communities. There is danger in letting it creep. So maybe today is not the day that we stand and say, this is something we're not going to bow over and do, but there will be a day that we have to make a decision. And every time we do this, we're making that decision to slowly go down that pathway. Unless there's any pertinent comments about the language that I sent, I can go down, because I have more lists for this.
I just wanted to say is that as far as the public participation plan, we still are asking for public comment and asking for feedback from the community. As far as the enabling legislation for the executive order, it's very specific to what it says was removed, and so all we did is frankly is just remove that part of the language. But the heart of the public participation plan is still there as far as trying to go out there and get the public feedback.
And I would just, for people who are unaware, Bradley Sarin is our civil rights attorney here at NCTD.
Awesome. They can't fire all of our civil rights attorneys. Okay. Awesome. Glad you're here. One that, so I don't know if I should see if anyone else wants to talk about this specific policy, because I have other ones. Just keep going. Okay, because I kind of do want feedback on this next one. So I didn't send over specific language because I think we needed to have this conversation as a board. I want us to talk about the executive committee and the full board generally, and the governance structure of NCTD, or I guess we're now changing the name, sorry. I think sometimes the EC is having like a pre-discussion about things that we're going to discuss. And it just seems not very efficient. And it also seems like sometimes our messaging gets decided before it gets to us. I know that's not the intent, and I'm not trying to disparage anyone in particular. I just think it's worth us actually looking at the governance structure to make sure that all board members are fully informed on the decisions that are happening, to make sure everybody is meaningfully part of the conversation, because we have such diverse communities that we represent up here, and they're really different needs. And so if we have pre-baked things coming out of a small committee, I am worried that we're not getting the best decision-making for the organization. So we could look at that as like an ad hoc committee to take on reviewing the governance structure, making recommendations back. I don't know, we could do a workshop on it. I don't have a specific suggestion. I just have a concern that I ask my colleagues to think about and to maybe consider moving some action forward on adjusting. I just think it's in the best interest of all of our cities and the organization moving forward. A good example today is the performance evals came in, and I'm happy to support them, but it was something that we all wanted to have that full conversation on. And just like this, there was a pre-conversation about this exact conversation. It's like a meta universe of what we're talking about here, but I'm really interested in us taking a look at that. So that's one. Public comment, I think, can be.
Could I just really quickly interject on that point, just to ask our staff to respond to the governance structure, why it was created in the first place, what things the executive committee generally looks like and what the makeup is of that, so that for the public, they have the ability to hear, and then also in case that strikes anything for any other members, they can chime in.
Good.
I'm happy to review that. So in terms of the governance structure of the board, that is set by statute in our enabling legislation under the Public Utilities Code. So the composition of the board in terms of who sits on the board, in terms of the membership, that is set by statute, and the timing of the election of the board chair and the vice chair is set by statute. So any modifications.
Could you just clarify even further what that means? That's through, so you say enabling legislation through the PUC, that means it's through state legislation?
Yes, state legislation adopted by the state legislature. And so any modifications to that, we could make modifications to the board policy, but it wouldn't change anything because it's pursuant to law. Any changes to that would require us going to the state legislature, taking their temperature to see, how likely they would be willing to open that legislation and make any changes. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying, it's a temperature thing, right? We've tried to do that on occasion. I think since I've been here in almost 13 years, we've had three major modifications. One was the stipend for the board. It was originally $75. It was increased to $150. It took us like 2 or 3 times going to the state legislature to finally get that to happen. And then we were able to get the city of San Diego as an ex officio member on the board after some time. And then we've had some modifications to our contracting provisions. I think maybe once or twice there were some modifications made there, but never got what we truly wanted out of that, but got some concessions there. So over 13 years, that's the extent of what we were able to get so far. And so all of the members, like I said, including the County of San Diego, are set by the legislation. It doesn't say 5th district, it just says the jurisdiction of that has the most population, and it outlines, the population area. And so that is the 5th district in the County of San Diego. So that's the legislation. As it relates to the committees, the whole committee structure was a construct of an earlier board, right? There's nothing that requires that we have board committees at all. The earlier boards, I think this was back, I think Bill Horn was the board chair at that time, so like way back. They felt that there was, a lot of things coming to the board that hadn't been looked at by, any other subcommittee or something like that. And they decided to go with this structure where we had the executive committee looking at executive level staff. In fact, the employment agreements that Sean and I have with the board expressly state that the executive committee will be the evaluation body that evaluates our performance, not the full board. And so that would be a modification to our employment agreements as well. As it relates to the executive committee, they look at things that are district-wide changes of policy. So that's why they would review the board policies, for example, and things of that nature. The Marketing, Service Planning, and Business Development Committee looks at, service planning items, service changes, marketing type of, if we wanted, I remember specifically when we wanted to get a new website, they were kind of the subcommittee, so to speak, that was looking at the new website and working through kinks on that and trying to figure out what was best, making sure we had ADA compliance and things like that. And then we have the Performance Administration and Finance Committee, and they look at, of course, the budget. The budget goes to them in advance to look at, make sure that we're on track, look at the assumptions, see if they're reasonable, look at our funding sources, see if we are meeting the goals that we've set in the budget for the prior year, things of that nature. So that structure was kind of set up to make sure there was someone looking more closely, because when you sit on the dais once a month, it's, you're more at a 30,000-foot level perhaps than when you're sitting on those committees. Whether or not it's meeting that expectation is for the board to decide. But that's what it was. We did have, we also had a railroad, oh gosh, what was the name of the committee? The Risky Committee. RISI Committee,
Rail
yeah.
Safety and Community Enhancement.
Yeah. We had that committee that was seated for, I think, a year or two. We had some recommendations that came out of that were, some of them were implemented, some of them weren't, due to feasibility. And that was just a very ad hoc committee that, for 2 years, and then it went away. So that committee structure is entirely up to the board. The board can decide that it doesn't want a committee, process or not, it's entirely up to the board.
And
I hope that's helpful.
just to clarify, when you were talking about the enabling legislation, that's for the entire board, not for the committees. And the committees are something that we can still dictate, because I think that was where the question was.
Yeah,
Okay.
the committees that I mentioned, executive, PAF, and MISPITA, those are all a construct of the board, have nothing to do with our enabling legislation.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the clarity. I know you had, go ahead, board alternate.
Just a clarifying question. So are the three-person nomination committee for both the board chair and the vice chair, is that pursuant to state legislation?
No.
Okay, so I guess a follow-up is, what is the justification behind having a three-person committee? Did that come from another board? Or is that best practices, or just want
That
more
was from a
clarification
prior
on that?
board, in fact, before I even got here. And that was just the way they had determined to do it. Traditionally, ever since I've been here, and I think you've been here longer than I have, most of the board chairs have sit for 2 years, and the vice chairs for 2 years, but we don't have anything in statute, nothing in board policy that requires that.
Okay.
And I also believe that the nominating committee was a board construct, can be changed. And also the ex officio member, as you know, in the legislation does not have a vote on the board, but also in board policy cannot serve on the nominating committee.
Right, okay. And then, not to get us off track for board policy 2, but just to go back to board policy 5, as member Joyce kind of mentioned, as this administration continues to put out executive orders, and I'm sure it's intentional that some agencies rely heavily on federal funding and some don't, but maybe looking at, and this is so much easier said than done, but looking at diversifying our funding streams so that we are not so
TC is for.
so heavily reliant on whatever this administration is going to be putting out in the next 3 years. Thanks.
Great, thank you. I know Board Member Joyce, you had other comments, so you can continue and then I'll keep going down the line.
Okay. In that same vein, I would, I had concerns last time about our elections timing, and thank you, it was brought up that it's in the statute. Perhaps that is something that we should work on getting changed in the next year or so with our state legislature. So the nominations process also doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I think there are better ways to get to where we're trying to go. I think we should take that on and adjust our processes so that it's not, again, giving some other committee the power to pre-choose who's coming in and then voting on it. And you feel like when you're voting on it after a committee has made that recommendation, that you create conflict where it probably doesn't need to be. And so I think just as a board, prefer us not have that added layer. A lot of what I'm asking for is to take off the layers that I think have separated our thinking and allow us come together as a board to make these motions together. So I think to the best that we could do that with the nominations. I'd also like to add a requirement for, and this is definitely not personal, but it's just something I think makes the most sense for the future, is for any of our leadership for our committees or our broad board should have at least a year's experience on the board. That would have made me ineligible, last time as well. So it just makes sense to have a strong familiarity should you be pushed into having to take direct leadership of an organization. So those are other adjustments that I think should be made. I would ask my colleagues, do you want me to draft these and bring them back? Do you think we should have staff do it? Like, please comment on that, because this is not for the void. This is for you to consider as a member of the board too. And then I think I brought up that public comment seems like it's super clunky and that we should streamline it as best we can as we're, again, trying to get as many people involved in this process as possible. I'm surprised we don't have more public comments because we have so many users of what we do. And so I think if anyone wants to comment, we should be like welcoming in it. I know we do here in person, but sometimes our policies, again, don't reflect that welcomeness. So I think our policies should reflect that as best we possibly can.
Yeah, actually, on a positive note to what you just mentioned, we did our first wave of online public input for this current open house. And we did have quite a few people online that gave comments. And I think that would be our preferred method going forward, in addition to in-person, is to have online open houses either on social media or on Zoom so people can jump in and participate live.
Thank you. And Mr. Joyce, are you done with your line of?
I think I've given enough. I
Okay.
have others, but those are the most important ones.
All right, great. Mr. Garcia?
So first of all, I apologize for being tardy. I had to officiate a funeral, and as much as I tried, I still was 16. Thank you for the 16 minutes late. But anyway, I need to apologize for that. That's not my custom to be late to this meeting. Not that I'm late to other things. I discovered something when I was on Planning Commission in the city of Escondido, that there are these things that we get that you have to do. And because it's attached to funding. And like it or not, I learned that I had to do that. And what I'm hearing today, it certainly seems like that is the case. But all I would say is that I expect that our services, our level of services, and to those that we serve, our customers, doesn't change. As simple as that. So in practicality, for me, our mission continues to move forward while we comply as we have been called to do. So that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Mr. O'Hara?
I love sitting next to you. You said exactly my thoughts, and, I look at it as, I had a whole thing about the first line in this and what it means. And there are things that we get in our own day-to-day as counselors and representatives, like the state mandate, which rips away our local control over housing, which is not something any of us like. But we deal with the state, and that's kind of the way it is, whether we like it or not. And it's not really up for debate whether we're on one side of it or the other. It is what it is. But I also look around this group, and I look at how we do things at all these meetings, and I have never seen anybody pull this out in the middle of a meeting and find the policy to make sure they're on track. There are 10 of us here who represent a broad base of constituents. And we are up here to look at their best interest. And I think that we do that every meeting. And whether this line is in here or not in here, that's what we're going to do. And so I concur. I think we move forward. Thank you.
Board
Very
Member
well said
Martinez.
by both of you. I verbalized my kind of outrage and sadness about this, but I do know with our leadership, our executive leadership in this board will do the right thing. And we'll comply because we're forced to comply, but hopefully things will change in the future. So I'm hopeful.
All right, Vice Chair Sanella.
Yep. And I agree with the last three speakers as well, so I won't reiterate everything that they said. But I will say that there's really two aspects of culture within an organization. You have your policies, right? But you also have your tone from the top. And I heard some of that just spoken about just now. And we have two great leaders that just got great reviews from this entire board. And in my first year here, I've not seen anything that would give me any concern that tone won't be right and won't continue to support everybody that we serve in every community that we serve. And so I have the full confidence in both of you. And I think I'm comfortable, although may not like it, I'm comfortable with the language coming out so that we can continue on with our mission.
Thank you. Okay, I know, Mr. Joyce, you asked us to weigh in on some of the things you brought up. So one thing before I add some feedback, if you would like to, you totally can. Do you want to? And then I'll go back to mine. Yeah.
I wanted to also kind of piggyback on what Board Member Joyce was talking about with regards to the committees. Being one of those folks that was on the executive committee, certainly I think the goal, and I don't know I can't speak for the boards, decades ago, it was probably to drive some efficiency, right? Clearly, it's not working. We're going to end up having, this is a board, one thing I've learned in the last 9 months, 10 months, whatever it's been, there's a lot of strong opinions on this board and a lot of passion for what we do and what we do as individuals and what we do for the communities that we represent. And so I'd have no issue with getting rid of the committees. It would have saved me a meeting, and we were going to talk about all these things anyways today. And so I'm supportive of your recommendations with regards to committees.
If I may, I think from what I had understood, it was just with regards to the executive committee seeing things prior to the board fully seeing things, including the nominating process and the nominating committee, but not necessarily the marketing and the finance committee, correct? Can I get clarity on what you're...
I can clarify. It would be to review our structure, including all committees.
In general.
But one thing I didn't mention about the EC, the executive committee versus what we do, in my understanding of the board policy, it says the EC will review, and it gives a very broad language, and then it says some examples of what it could do. So I think it'd be a really good, strong board policy to very strictly say what the EC does. That way it doesn't go far afield, and we don't feel like things are getting through one and it's not coming to the other. I think that would help with transparency of all of it. And I'm not saying that's happening now. Again, I want to be very clear. I just think our board policy should reflect good practice. Our practice should be that's collaborative among everybody. So that would be part of the recommendation. But then to really review how effective our structure is overall.
Okay, thank you. Question before I have my comments and responses. Could you tell me what best practices are for other agencies with regards to nomination for leadership? I just want to understand that. I know we don't have that necessarily, but I'd love to hear a little bit more.
Well, that's put me on the spot. Honestly, it's different everywhere, and it's occasionally politically driven, it's occasionally jurisdictionally driven. I've reported to boards and agencies that had over 10 jurisdictions. They did not like, or they liked having the committees because there were too many jurisdictions represented and they couldn't, they really needed some direction. So the committees were set up to primarily look at certain things like service planning. Another one was set up to look at finance. And so there really was no disagreement over who should serve on those committees. It was largely people that wanted to be involved in the financial piece, people that largely wanted to be. Executive committee for me is a little different here than I think it is in some other places. The executive committee is usually pulled out to deal with either critical legal issues that come up. They do typically start the process for the reviews of anyone who's has a contract with the board, or major things that sort of come up. I think from an agency perspective, we probably haven't had a lot of super big items that came to the executive committee outside of the annual performance reviews. I think when we have large critical items that are legal, we try to bring the whole board into a closed session to have those discussions in real time. I would say that boards that do have committees are very specific that whatever things are talked about or discussed in that meeting is not set in stone. And then when it's brought back to the full board in a closed session, the full board should have the autonomy to be able to have that discussion and make changes as needed. The executive committee is there to say, based on the information that we had, we are recommending X, but it's up to the discretion of the board. I've worked at agencies that didn't have them and it worked just fine. I will say that in mid-sized agencies, there's probably very few committees. Usually it's just a finance committee to kind of overlook some things, and then a planning committee to kind of overlook, are there certain areas of our service grid that aren't getting the same attention as others, and making sure that we sort of right the ship on that. But it's a combination of everything. Yeah.
Sean, if you'd like, I can talk about Sandag and MTS.
Yeah.
If you'd like.
Let me,
Okay.
yeah, let me, the nomination piece has been absolutely different everywhere I've been. In fact, at one agency I worked at, the board consulted me on who they thought should be the chair and vice chair of the board. And the reason they did that was because, and I'll give you an example, when I was the chair of the MPO, I purposely picked a polar opposite from me to be the vice chair so that he and I could work on issues collectively. He was a former Army major. He had insight into things on large capital projects that were affected by the military in the state of Washington, and he and I worked really well together. And so I always thought that was kind of an important match to have on the board. You know, I've worked with some where we were completely removed from that equation, and the entire board sat in a room and said, okay, who's interested in it? If you are, give us your rationale for why. And as a group, let's decide who the best folks to put in charge of the board is. I have seen what you have recommended, where board members have to have a certain period of time in the seat so they sort of understand the policy and like the nuance issues that are occurring with the agency. But I would defer to Mary on MTS and Sandag.
Yeah, just for some local perspective. MTS, you may have seen, just elected their board chair and vice chair, so they are in a completely different structure than them, so I won't draw too many comparisons. But Sandag does also have a nominating committee similar to us. They solicit input from their board members who would like to be chair, vice chair, second vice chair. Their nominating committee takes those statements of interest from board members and then makes a recommendation that then goes to their full board for approval. So it's very similar to ours. Their nominating committee is much larger because their board is much larger. Yeah, they have, I think it's about a 14-member nominating committee. It's much larger than ours because their board is more than double our size. So ours is 3 members because it can't be a majority of the board for quorum, Brown Act reasons. So that's kind of where we're at with the makeup of the nominating committee.
Thank you. Okay. Did you, okay, I see Ms. Contreras. Go ahead.
Just a few things. So on The nominating committee, I mean, it's kind of a farce. So I think we should just do away with it because it just seems like to take extra time. And at the end of the day, you don't need to even have submitted an application, as we found out, to be moved into, a different role. So like vice chair or chair. So I just, for efficiency purposes, if it's just going to be a farce anyways, we might as well just do away with it. The other thing that I want to say on Board Policy 5 is, when do we anticipate to have legal clarity on this? Because isn't it being reviewed by the courts right now?
Yeah, it is. I would say, to be honest, and just from my seat, that's not a one-time discussion. I think that the first discussion we have on it is going to change 2 months later. I think just from the history of being in this business long enough, if agencies try to work around this with language that is close to this, they will create another executive order that will tell you to remove that language, and we'll be right back here next third.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is that whether this order from the Trump administration is legal or not is actually not defined yet. Is that correct?
Yeah,
It's kind of a yes or no question.
it's not a yes or no question, because
Right.
The answer that I give today could put undue stress on this agency. And
Well, I mean, I think the courts.
From my seat, the executive administration of this country has ordered us to remove that language and face federal funding stoppages. And there are other sectors of business that have had their funding stopped regardless.
No,
of
I
whether
hear
there's a
you.
court
I hear you. But the
ruling or not.
answer is no, that this is not 100% legal at this point, because his executive order is being deemed illegal, at least partially. So that's where I just have a difficulty saying, yes, let's strike this on just the facts that this order itself is, some courts have seen it as partially illegal. So I feel like until that is resolved, I just don't understand how we wouldn't have any basis to fight, because we don't know whether or not this executive order has legal standing, and that clarity is not here. So I just don't think that we need to take this position today,
I would
especially
answer
if we
that
can do it the next time.
I would answer that by saying, I don't think there's going to be a decision on that ruling by next month. I would say that in the absence of this language, the board still has the right to deny anything that they deem a violation of this.
No, I hear what you're saying. I just, moving forward with striking something that is not even considered legal in its full basis today is a difficult decision to do.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that you're getting an argument from us on that. What we're
Yeah.
saying is that.
No, I
we are in a
hear what you're
position
saying.
To not jeopardize federal
Yeah,
funding. don't
I
think
totally
there's-
hear.
I don't think there's anybody in the organization that is saying, yeah, we should.
No, I hear you. I understand. And I'm not saying that you're saying that. But what I am saying is that there is the order that we're talking about that's rescinding this language in Policy 5 is still making its way through the courts because it is not a fully legal order. So that's the only point that I'm trying to make.
I don't think that would stop this administration from holding.
Sure, it's a fascist administration. It's not going to stop them.
Can I give an example? Earlier this year, the federal government, when they first took office, issued, I believe it was an executive order to halt all federal funding and the disbursement of all federal funds. Our CFO turned to me and said, they can't do that. And, it was challenged in the courts. And a judge put a stay on the order, and that meant that it was, no enforcement of that executive order was to be allowed. I don't believe that that's what's happening in this case. It's in the courts, but I don't believe that a stay has been issued. The stay was issued, I believe it might even still be pending in the courts. We had heard rumblings that there were some agencies that did have their funding frozen for a period of time. So there was a stay in place. the federal administration was not supposed to be enforcing this executive order, and we had heard that they were in some cases. So I think the recommendation that we have before you is just that we would like to be very careful and take the most cautious.
I 100%, I hear you. I hear you. You're trying to be extremely cautious. I totally get it. There's millions of dollars on the line. But this executive order is partially unenforceable because it has not obtained the status of being fully legally recognized, because courts have said some of this looks illegal. So I just wanted to put that out to the board because I think that's important information as well.
I think until this makes its way to the Supreme Court and we have a final determination by the Supreme Court, it has to be treated as though it still stands. There's no stay on the order, and some of the federal courts are disagreeing. There's a conflict in the federal courts as to whether it is valid or not. And so until it makes its way to the Supreme Court and we have a decision, I think we have to consider it as a valid order.
I hear you. I hear you. I just think it's also important for the board to understand that this is not 100% a legal order. So that's just a fact that has not been presented to the board that I think is extraordinarily important.
Thank you, Ms. Contreras. Mr. Sinella, I think you had a comment?
Yeah, I got a, maybe just because where I sit, I got a real strong sense of an uncomfort level by our CEO in this last bit of discussion, and not because I don't think he was personally uncomfortable, but I think he has the best interests of the district at heart, and he's concerned about maintaining the contracts that we have and the funding sources that we have. And so in what I believe is the best interest of our leadership and our district and the people that we serve, I'm going to second that motion that was made earlier.
Okay. I still have comments, but I see a few others. No, go ahead, Mr. O'Hara. I always go last, so it's fine. Go ahead.
Oh, I thought you were done. I was just circling back to Member Joyce's comments. We're talking about the requirements for nomination, and I agree the process is really clunky. I think you and I was our first or second meeting here, and probably some of the people we didn't know even that well, right? So it's a clunky process. I highly disagree, though, with the you have to have a year of performance for eligibility. At the same site, you could say you and I shouldn't have voted then because we don't have a year of eligibility to know these people for a year, right? And so we're put here because we're supposed to know the importance of our constituents and do the research to find out where each of these people stand as they come up for these nominations and who we're sitting there. And I expect that all of us do that. So I would be against that part of the recommendation to look into, just for the record. I think I'd hate to see somebody who has all the expertise, all the tools in it come up here and they have to wait a year to really serve this community to the best that they can because they didn't have a year, even though they were the best candidate in the world for a job. I also think it's somewhat discriminative, but that's a different discussion. And I think as we experienced and as the only independent up here, I can tell you, I think part of what we're talking about isn't really the process. It's that it became about Democrats and Republicans instead of about the end product. And I hope that isn't the case going forward. I hope we vote however the right way is, whatever the situation, regardless of party preference. And I think that might be why it's being brought up again. But that's where I stand on that.
Is anyone else? Okay. I think, go ahead, Mr. Joyce, and then I'll round it out.
I just really quickly push back. You really should know the organization. And I agree you're in this position, or any of us are in because we're elected, but if you're elected to the first time, just for instance, if you're elected for the first time to office in December and then you are you would have no experience working with anybody up here. Most of us don't have experience working with each other up here unless we happen to be on some other thing. It just, I think those roles are really important. And I think, and I'm not denigrating anyone's ability to do it. I think the greatest can jump in and do it well, but they're not going to have any kind of memory of what happened last year and the things that we were facing. So it's just a lack of continuity that I'm pushing back on. It's not included in the motion, so I'll let it go. But this is definitely not a partisan thing. This is a continuity of this agency is an important thing. Second, because the motion is moving forward without anything that we just talked about, I guess. When it comes to putting agenda items on the agenda, how do we do that? So if I were to say, hey, I want to bring this back forward, and maybe two of us wanted to sign on to an agenda item, what's the current process for that?
So that would be through the chair. You would just notify the chair that you have a desire to have something on the agenda, and then she would discuss it with the CEO to get it on the agenda. And just for clarification purposes, I just want to make sure I understand. The motion that was made by Supervisor Desmond is to approve staff's recommendation, and that was seconded by our board vice chair, Sanella. The discussion that we had, Board Member Joyce, around the governance structure, that is something that you're proposing that we have a look at, perhaps maybe a board retreat or something like that. I'm thinking, right? Am I right about that?
I would trust staff's opinion of what is the best way for us to have a meaningful conversation about it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't part of any motion that you were making. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I think we had a little bit of that discussion last year. To be fair, it's a weird place for us to initiate that meeting because we don't dictate how the board is choosing to assemble.
Right.
Except for, we hope you're here every third Thursday. So
I'll be here twice if you invite me.
right. So I think, last year we had a couple conversations. We talked about, is there possibly a need to have a third person that's part of the board? That would likely be legislatively driven. We also had a conversation about the executive committee and what would they want to do. And I don't think the agency has any issues if the board wishes to do so, to sit down and have a conversation about, historically, this is what we've done, what would you like to see done, and then bring that back to the board for consideration.
So the other piece that was on my list was the agenda items. I mean, just to be frank, going through a single member of a board and then the CEO to get anything considered by the board is not considered best practice if you want to be an advocate for your city. And this is, again, not personal to anyone in particular, but there are things that not everybody wants to talk about, and they're important still. So that's another piece that I think has to be considered if we're going to look at the governance structure. So I will retreat, but those are all very important to me. And we brought some of these up last year, and I think the fact that we're here says that we need to do something different.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, that was awesome in terms of a good conversation. I feel like we all shared where we were at. I've already shared my concerns around board policy number 5. I'll start off with that. I shared those last week and definitely echoed the sentiments of many of the board members that shared today. I do want us to, I think I had mentioned this last week, to continue to give us updates on where we're at. So if we're able to make some sort of, hey, we want to insert something back in, we have the ability to do that. I think it's just allowing us the latitude to be able to do that. I know at our jurisdictions, we're also paying attention to many of the things that we've had to change in our policies. So I totally understand that. With regards to the conversation we were having around the nominating committee and the committees in general, I think it would be, and if you saw me looking over, it was mainly just to ask our CEO if there's a way we could potentially have an agendized discussion about committees. I think that's what he was referring to as well. Just because I feel like there's a lot of nuance associated with it, and just to be able to talk about the history, figure out where we're all at, and then of course take action, whether it's to remove them, whether it's to restructure them, whatever that might look like. I think it would be instead of us reacting today, I think it would just be a better use of our time to agendize it and then have a full and transparent discussion, and maybe some of our constituents would want to weigh in on that as well specifically. So I think if we could agendize it and have a discussion, I'd be more than happy to obviously accommodate that. I think the thing that I'd want to mention is that I do want to respond to a few different things that were brought up, where, I think one of the things with regards to the whole process, the nominating process, I have to say, at least from my perspective, I actually, since the 6 or now 7 years that I've been going into it, had not seen an issue with it until, what happened this year. And so I do understand, where you all are coming from and where the sentiment is with regards to, if you're new, how do you have the ability to maybe have feedback on it? I think the piece that at least from what I had seen, was, anyone who's interested can apply. They're then considered from this particular committee. It's brought forward to the full board for discussion. Actually, 3 times? It's 3 times, twice. So it is still a very open and transparent process. I just want to mention that because our staff is not going to allow us to make decisions behind closed doors. I just want to clarify that and also reemphasize that our staff will keep us accountable in that particular sense to make sure that we're not doing anything behind closed doors. So from that perspective, I just want to say, I do think that we've done a good job as an agency. And to add to the element of, the experience piece, from the time I've been here, yes, the people that have been in leadership, whether it was the first year that I served, I think it was Mr. Kranz and Mr. Feller. I think from that time, at least from when I was there, it was always folks that had served for a period of time in those positions. So I understand that, hey, having that 1 year or at least some level of experience makes sense to me. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is that I think, obviously, I would hope that we all have the best interest when we're up here. I think when we run for our positions, we're running hopefully to represent our constituencies, not special interests, not whatever. And I think people will see that reflected. I think this agency does an amazing job of trying to make sure that we are servicing everyone that we are supposed to. I hope that as we continue to govern up here, yes, there will be times we're going to disagree because of our differences, and that's, I think, just a normal democracy. But at the same time, I do hope we can do so respectfully. I think that, that's just a good model of good governance. And for me, that's what I want to do for my kids, is to make sure that they can see that we can disagree and do so respectfully. So I just wanted to, make sure that we talk about that. In terms of the committees, since we've decided to agendize it, I won't go into any other comments on that specifically, just because I'd rather hear a full, historical overview and then give my recommendations on it at that point, and thoughts. But other than that, thank you for the presentation. I know we have a motion and a second on the floor. Unless there are any other comments or questions, we can go ahead and take the vote.
Just a point of clarification.
Sure.
So we're agendizing the committees, so are we not talking about governance structure as a whole? Or anything else?
The
I just wanna be
governance
clear
stru-
before we leave.
So
what
the governance
to
structure as a whole for the entire board, like if you're talking about the board structure itself, is that what you're asking?
Agenda
or?
items.
Oh, you're talking about agenda items as
elections,
well.
I mean, all the things that we mentioned that are outside the committee scope.
Yeah.
These are, conversations I'm asking for, and I
I
just
think
don't
if
want
the
to know
board
from
would
getting.
want to see it, we can give the legislative piece of how the board is put together, anything we might need to change as a result of that, or what the board may want to change, and then we can do committees sort of as a subsection of that, if that's what you're looking for.
Okay.
Included with that, I think you're looking for the rules on the conduct of agendizing and the conduct of meetings as well. Is that correct?
And you have enough clarity to bring that back to us. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, perfect. With that, let's go ahead and take a vote. I'm going to look to Ms. Rodriguez to do our roll call, please.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? On the motion of Board Member Desmond, seconded by Vice Chair Sinella, to adopt Resolution 2506 to approve proposed modifications of board policies, motion passes with Board Member Contreras voting no.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we are now on the next item, which is related to the annual performance evaluation for the Deputy CEO and Chief General Counsel. Karen Tuholsky, our Senior Legal Counsel for Regulatory Compliance, will present this item. So Ms. Tuholsky, you have our attention.
Good afternoon. Executive Committee, can you hear me? The Executive Committee met in closed session on October 13th, 2025, and conducted the annual performance evaluation for the Deputy Chief Executive Officer and Chief General Counsel. Full Board of Directors met in closed session today to consider recommendations advanced by the Executive Committee. As per Executive Committee determination, Ms. Winfrey's performance is rated as exceeds expectations, and she will receive a 3% salary increase in annual retention stipend as specified in her current agreement. It is recommended that Ms. Winfrey's base salary be increased by an additional 5% in consideration of additional duties that she has assumed as Deputy Chief Executive Officer, and further, that Ms. Winfrey receive a one-time incentive payment in the amount of $10,000 in recognition of her performance and accomplishments. The recommendation before you now is to receive the Executive Committee recommendation regarding the annual performance evaluation for the Deputy Chief Executive Officer and Chief General Counsel and approve the additional recommendations as previously detailed. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments today?
We do not, Madam Chair.
All right, at this time, public registration to speak on this item will end. Are there any board member questions or comments regarding this agenda item?
Move approval.
Okay, so I heard a move approval, but I think Mr.
Yeah.
Sinella had a comment.
No, I was gonna do the same, so I'll second.
Okay, you're seconding. Okay, so Mr. Joyce motioned and then seconded by Mr. Sinella. So any other questions, comments? Ms. Contreras?
I just want to say that Lori has been just incredible and, taking on these additional duties. I don't know how you do it, but you're doing it and it makes this agency better. So thank you so much for that.
Yes, and I want to say the same. Since I've had the opportunity to work with you, you have clearly taken on so many different components for this agency. And so just we're lucky to have you, and thank you for what you're doing. So with that, Suhail, if we could please call the vote.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? On the motion of Board Member Joyce, seconded by Vice Chair Sinella, to approve annual performance evaluation and related actions for Deputy Chief Executive Officer and Chief General Counsel, motion passes.
All right, and then the last item on the agenda is related to the annual performance evaluation for the Chief Executive Officer. And so, Ms. Tuholsky, I'll pass it back off to you.
My apologies, Board Chair. Desmond is absent on that vote.
Yes, thank you.
Hello again. The Executive Committee met in closed session on October 13th, 2025, in accordance with Board Policy Number 3, and conducted the annual performance evaluation of the Chief Executive Officer. The full Board of Directors met in closed session today to consider recommendations advanced by the Executive Committee. As per the Executive Committee determination, Mr. Donaghy's performance is rated as exceeds expectations, and he will receive a 2.5% salary increase as specified in his current agreement. It is recommended that Mr. Donaghy's employment agreement be amended to add an annual $20,000 retention stipend, and further, that Mr. Donaghy receive a one-time incentive payment in the amount of $11,935 in recognition of his performance and accomplishments advancing the district's goals and initiatives. The recommendation before you now is to receive the Executive Committee recommendation regarding the annual performance evaluation for the Chief Executive Officer and approve additional recommendations as previously detailed. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Suhail, do we have any public comments on this one?
No, Madam Chair.
All right. At this time, public registration to speak on this item will end. Are there any board member questions or comments regarding this item? Ms. Contreras?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and move approval. I just want to say, Sean, you've done an incredible job, and I hear it from a lot of different folks. And I really appreciate you going the extra mile to really keep our cities engaged. I think it's a breath of fresh air, and it is the way that we can build just a better agency to really get everybody connected that needs to be connected. So I thank you for your leadership.
I'll second that motion. And I'll add, we're all on a number of boards and committees around the region, and you look forward to meetings where you have 100% confidence in the leadership and the CEOs and the general management of those positions. And I can say without a doubt, we all have 1,000% confidence in you at this helm. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll echo those sentiments. Sean actually rides our routes, which is really, I remember the first day we met him, it was just cool to know that he actually took the initiative to go do that, which I think just shows that you want to be out and make sure that you're connecting with folks. And we definitely do receive the feedback from our communities. I get emails all the time, and Sean will sometimes personally reach out to our constituents and just connect with them. So I just want to say thank you. The other pieces is that I can tell based on how you've built up our team, which also I should have said that with Lori as well, how you all have built up the team. We clearly have awesome employees. So I just want to say thank you to all of our employees too. You make our leadership work even harder. And so thank you to both of you. And with that, we can go ahead and call the vote.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Board Member O'Hara, to approve annual performance evaluation and related actions for the Chief Executive Officer. Motion passes with Desmond absent.
Thank you. And I know we had pulled agenda or consent item number 4. So we'll go ahead and Mr. O'Hara, I know that was something you had pulled. So if you'd like to mention why, and then we'll go ahead and take it from there.
Yeah, I honestly didn't know it would be pulled to the last part. I really just wanted to make a comment on it, and I really wanted to compliment. So if you haven't read number 4 is to receive unaudited quarterly investment report on our fourth quarter earnings. And I don't know if you looked at the numbers, but our number is 4.12 currently that we're returning at. And with I know that's not a private sector number you'd be jumping to the moon for. But in the public sector, that is with the restrictions and challenges to keep that money safe. I'm incredibly impressed. I know you've all probably done our recent evaluations of our city investments, just that time of year. And when I saw that number, I just felt we needed to give a big shout out and compliment to you and your staff on obtaining that number.
Yeah, thank you for that. I would take full credit for that because I always tell you math is hard. But I really want to give a shout out to, I've been fortunate in my career to work with some amazing finance professionals who went on to be transit CEOs in their own right and do their thing. Yoon is one of the best I have ever worked with. Her department is fantastic. They're constantly thinking about, in fact, one of the things that is a little bit of a challenge for us, and I think anybody who works in the public sector knows it's all color of money, right? So like where we need to put that money at the time we need to use it between federal and local dollars and those things. And their team is just fantastic about managing the investments that we have and managing the money we have in front of us right now to really put the best budget forward. And I think that's helped us over the years kind of stave off some of these emergency situations that other transit agencies are dealing with. And so I give full credit to Yoon and her team. And Yoon, I don't know if you want to say something about that?
Thank you. Although I'll be honest, we do have some limitations of where we can invest our funds. But we do try to minimize the amount of cash that we have in the checking account because it has low interest bearing. So we actually manage to keep just enough to pay our expenses for the next couple of weeks and trying to invest as much as we can, either with the county or LAVE. I agree with Sean. I have an incredible team, finance division that everyone has at heart the best interest for the district. Constantly, making budget revisions, everything to fund swapping, to be able to make sure billing to our grants. We bill every week, every month. They know that cash is important for us, so they all very actively work to make sure that we remain liquid here at the district. So,
Yeah, I was just really, really impressed. Obviously, I motion to approve, but I just want to make sure that it was noticed.
thank you.
I'll second. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and call the vote.
All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Oops, sorry. On the motion of Board Member O'Hara, seconded by Board Chair Papatel, to receive the unaudited quarterly investment report for the fourth quarter of 2025. Motion passes with Desmond absent.
Great, thank you. I will now turn to our CEO and see if you have anything to report out.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This Saturday, and I think an email went out this morning just as a reminder that we have our bus rodeo at West down here at the bottom of the hill on Mission. Please feel free to come down. Right now, we have about 700 folks RSVP'd. It is a family event. We've asked operators to come down. It's in conjunction with our friends at MTS. We did one at MTS last year. This year, it's our year, a little bit of a Halloween theme. So, bring the kids. We're going to have a car show there. We're pretty excited about that. Starts at 9 o'clock? 8? I was thinking 9 because I'm not a morning person. 8 o'clock. So we're really excited about that. If you've never been to a rodeo, like we have a national one that we do at APTA, and then we have the local one we do here. It is really a showcase of operators and maintenance really just kind of showing out and doing what they do best every day out on the street. And it's pretty impressive to watch them kind of run through the obstacle course and our maintenance team try to diagnose and do stuff in the garage. And so, we're just really thankful for that team. And so if you can come out, please join us. I know our friends from the Teamsters are here again today. We have been very fortunate to close on a few more contracts. That's number 3 of 6 that we're currently working on that we need to wrap up by the end of the year. But I always like to give a shout out to our union friends. They've been absolutely great partners to work with through the process. We still got some things that we got to work out through the transition, but they've come to the table and been very thoughtful about what they asked for and what we all believe should be right for our employees. And so just appreciate that and the support from the board on that. We had our Sandag quarterly meeting about a week or 2 ago. Really good conversation just about topics that are happening in real time and some of the issues that they're struggling with on revenue generation. Really, the topic of conversation was if we have money that's tied up in future projects and we know we're seeing some things shift at the federal level, what projects do we have ready to go now from a regional perspective where we can look to the state and we can look to the federal government to divert some funds to really sort of reevaluate what projects are out there. I know I've said it before, but I really appreciate Mario's leadership. I think he's a breath of fresh air over there. And I think their staff has responded really well to him and his expectations. So wanted to give him a shout out there. I know we've had a little bit of conversation about this. The SB 79 was signed by the governor's office, to be fair, and this may be my only political comment of the day. I was shocked that the governor signed it. If you haven't read any of the interviews that we have given, my stance on that is while I appreciate that the Bay Area needs to do whatever the Bay Area feels is right for the Bay Area, that shouldn't really be passed down to the rest of the state. I'm a firm believer in all the small projects and mega projects that I've done in my career, that the success of those projects were built on the partnerships we had with the cities. And any time that bills or legislation is passed that potentially gives one agency over another a way to circumvent good public policy is a problem. And the example that I would give is, I don't think it's okay for agencies who don't necessarily understand city plans to be able to circumvent those to build projects. Like if we really wanted to build a 10-story complex in a city that doesn't have fire life safety to be able to handle that, ladder trucks to be able to manage fire, police equipment to be able to manage those, we're creating a situation that's an undue burden to the city. I think the one thing that we've told everybody that's asked us is every project that we've gotten into over the past few decades has been successful because of the relationships and the thoughtfulness of the cities that we partner with and the members of our board who make those decisions. And so I appreciate the spirit of what they're trying to do. I think there's a lot of pieces of it that just weren't tied out correctly and could put some serious undue burden on the cities themselves. And so, you know, really, to be honest, you know, the reason that I'm probably getting a little soapboxy about it is because it doesn't apply to us at all in our current setting. Coaster is tier 1. The only 2 stations that would be eligible for that is Santa Fe and Old Town because it has trolley service. Our Sprinter line is hybrid rail operating in a commuter rail trackway, so it does not qualify for tier 2 light rail. We have plenty of great projects that are happening along those lines between Rancho Del Oro, Melrose, Escondido, Oceanside Transit Center. We already are engaged in those, and we have good conversations with our cities. And I don't ever want to build a wall between that relationship by someone thinking we're not going to take things into account as a result of having this new opportunity. So I just want to say that. And the last thing I would say is I definitely appreciate the support of this board. You know, coming to this organization was one of the very best moves I've ever made in my career. I love being here. I know we got a lot to do, but I really want to say that the reason we're able to do the things that we can do is because of the amazing employees that work here. And that was really one of the drivers for me when I first walked in the door was I knew we had good employees that wanted to really change the way we do business, change the way that you know, we could help out our cities and really do the best I can for the public. And so I give all the credit out here to our employee group and all the folks that work here. So that's all I had, unless anybody has any questions for me.
Thank you, Sean. Board members, do we have anything to report? Board Member Joyce?
I just briefly report, I sat on the Transportation Committee since our last meeting, and there was a really great conversation about the Youth Opportunity Pass, and the report was an incredible success, essentially. I looked at some of the Oceanside routes, like the 303 has 100, in the first 15 months, there's a 153% increase in ridership of youth riders. And I can tell you that there's folks riding it. That's a full bus when I try and get on it. So it's just a tremendous success. And I know there's been a lot of talk at Sandag about trying to figure out how to pay for its future. I want to state my full and undying support for it because I think it's really important to the future of all of our agencies.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Do we have any remaining public comments?
No, Madam Chair.
All right. At this time, public registration to speak on remaining public communications will end. So the next scheduled board meetings are Marketing, Service Planning, and Business Development Committee. That meeting is going to be on Tuesday, October 28th at 10 a.m. And then the regular board meeting, which will be Thursday, November 20th at 2 p.m. Oh, sure. And Mr. Donaghy has one more comment.
Yeah, apologies. I just want to make one more comment. Our good friend Sergeant Burke just came in. Can you stand up for a second? Sorry, man, I'll put you on the spot. Sooner or later, we want to bring to the board, we want to recognize the work that Sergeant King, who was his predecessor, did for our TESU unit. But Sergeant Burke heads up our transit enforcement unit for the San Diego Sheriff's Office. And I got to tell you, been around a lot of transit police, been around a lot of law enforcement partnerships in my career. This unit is one of the best units I have ever seen in my life. And it's in one of the presentations we got the other day, which we'll bring in a few weeks about a week to the committee, in fact, Tuesday, I believe, is really this idea that we've really taken a place where we're looking at infractions and citations differently by partnering with agencies. And we have veterinarians that come out and work with that team to help help find resources for people who have pets that are in our houseless community. We have nurses that go out with that team and help do work. So it's not just about enforcement, which they do a fantastic job at. It's really about building that community experience. And I wanted to take a minute to introduce Sergeant Burke. He is top notch. Every time I've ever responded to an incident in the field and he's there, that team is just phenomenal. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. And I didn't know if you wanted to say a few words or.
No, I appreciate it. Appreciate the praise. I just took over recently, so I was a part of the unit as a deputy, and now I'm part of the unit as a supervisor. And a lot of which is what I tried to build was have the same values that fall in line with NCTD and our partnership. So I've been so fortunate to select the deputies that come onto the unit. Even when I was just a deputy, the prior sergeant took my advice and luckily it's worked out for us. But I look forward to keeping the partnership and maintaining the values that fall in line with NCTD and the community.
Thank you. Thanks for the shout out and this. Thank you for your service. Really appreciate it. And on that note, we are adjourned at 3:47. Thank you.